No, I won't train your 9-year-old remotely. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Strong Female Athlete podcast. Today is a special solo intro to a past episode that I am going to share with you today because recently I have been getting so many wild inquiries of sports parents asking me to train their 9, 10, 11-year-old remotely. And in the past few years, I've had to put strict age restrictions on my remote training program because the truth is, young ones should not be doing a remote program because remote training means they're by themselves. They're not out playing with friends. They're on a super structured program. And that's not what I believe for this age group. I have talked over and over again on my podcast. It's blasted all over my website, my training philosophy, that young ones should be doing task-oriented games for speed and agility. They don't need to be lifting heavy weights super young. They just need to be learning the fundamental movement skills that will support those more advanced training programs when they get into high school, when they become teenagers, or they get through their growth spurts. We just don't need to rush this. And I don't know why, even though all of my philosophy is on the internet, people still beg me to write remote programs for their really young kids. And I turned down the money. I turned down hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And I have to turn down these people's money because this is not what kids need at this age. The last thing I want is for a 9-year-old to get a structured remote program from me and to be yelled at by their parents that they have to do it or they can't forget Erica's workouts for this day. Like, I struggle to believe a 9-year-old is leading the way with this. I struggled to believe a 9-year-old approached their mom and said, I want to do a remote program. No, they didn't. 9-year-olds want to be outside. They want to have fun with friends. They want to race. They want to compete. They want to do fun speed and agility games so that they can become better competitors and they can be more stimulated. And the training that I do now for this age group, it's all small group training. I don't do one-on-one sessions anymore for my young ones. I mainly have partner or small group because young kids, especially when it comes to speed and agility, they have to compete against others and they have to have something to chase after or to react to really build their agility and their cognitive function and their quick decision making at these ages where they're very plastic and they're still developing mentally and physically too. So I'm just going to step off my podium now and stop ranting. I have to share this past episode I did with who I think is one of the best youth soccer performance coaches in the country. Mike Whiteman. He is the director of performance for the Riverhounds, and Mike is absolutely incredible. He is like a walking textbook, a walking peer-reviewed like publication. Like, Mike is so knowledgeable about long-term athletic development and what young kids should be doing to develop properly, and then where they should be going when they're in high school and college and how the training should look different. So I'm going to let you guys just rewatch this episode so you understand what under 13-year-olds need for speed and agility. And so you understand what they need for strength training. It's not heavy weights right away. We work up to that. It's a variety of movement. It's learning motor skills. It's doing different activities and working muscle groups that aren't always worked in soccer so that they develop, but then they also don't get overuse injuries. So I'm going to leave this episode here. So if you've already watched it, I recommend you rewatch it because I still rewatch it to this day and I learn more every time. And for those of you who haven't seen it, you're in for a treat. If you think your 9-year-old needs advanced speed training or a remote program that's super structured from me, you need to watch this episode. So I'm just going to leave it here and I hope you enjoy.
As always, Erica, a pleasure and a true blessing to be able to speak with you about the truth in regards to training.
I think that's what I'm going to title this episode, The Truth About Speed Training for 9 to 12-year-olds. This
Right.
is such an important topic, and I love working with the young ones, and I know you do too. And I see a lot of the work you do with ages 9 to 12, and we're going to get into that today. But I'm really curious, Mike, when you were a young athlete, like think back to maybe 9-year-old, 10-year-old Mike, what were you doing for quote unquote speed training?
Right. Actually, I wasn't doing anything specific, and largely that probably was to my benefit when I was younger as well too. Just a lot of general preparedness, and I at the time didn't even know it as such. I just did push-ups and sit-ups, and I actually specifically recall between commercials watching SportsCenter, the highlights for the day, and Scooby Doo. That was the thing. So it was when I was about 9, 10 years old, just crushing sit ups and push ups. And then it dawned on me that fitness mattered. So I would just go for runs in my neighborhood and try to progressively run further and it was that simple.
No, were you just playing soccer or were you doing other activities?
And again, I at that point I was doing multiple sports, so I was a baseball, basketball, and soccer player at that point, and I think the diversity helped me as I aged because that was our natural break from season to season. Now, as I got more serious with soccer, when you got a little bit beyond that 12, 13, we start getting into before all the academies now, it was Cup, USYSA soccer, and that sort of took over then. But until largely until that point, 9, 10-year-old Mike, that age that we're speaking on specifically today, I was just moving, really. Climbing, running, throwing, wiffle ball, home run derby, playing one-on-one pickup games with my friends with hoops, things of that nature, kicking a ball off the wall. It was non-structured.
Now, do you want to tell the listeners who you're working with today?
Yeah, it's pretty diverse. So we have and my assistant Amy Wisniowski. She works primarily with the younger grassroots age groups, and that affords me the opportunity to work with our older competitive ECNL age groups and my collegiate athletes, Sarah Shapansky, who had a wonderful podcast with her, Tessa Della Rose of North Carolina. So I mean, honestly, some of the future NWSL and professional soccer players, and God willing, maybe even a couple national team players in there as well too. Um, so the we'll say the spectrum is quite broad, but the older athletes I typically work with because we do specify more at that point, and we need to objectify and collect data and keep measuring just to make sure that we're keeping moving in the correct direction.
Let's discuss what's going on at that 9 to 12 age group and
Right.
why their training is so much different than like the Sarah Shupanskis and all the older girls. Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, Simply Faster, and one of my favorite speed timing systems from them, the Free Lap. I use it for my own sprint training as well as for my athletes, and they love it. It's super easy to set up, you can take it to the field on your own, and you can get accurate speed times to track your progress. Check the Free Lap link in the caption below to start adding timing into your speed sessions. If you know me, you know I love my Free Lap. If you're serious about speed, it's time to start timing.
Right. At the youngest age groups, they really should just be acquiring general skills and moving, and we need just that broad athletic base. And a lot of times I have to almost cringe when they're trying to sell overly specific things to young athletes such as speed training, because they need to like anything, any endeavor, whether it's school or in this case athletics, you need general skills. You need to be able to first learn to read, so eventually you can then read to learn, sort of deal. And a lot of times they are trying to, in the culture in which we live, trying to microwave everything and trying to get to an end far too quickly.
Now, I've seen a lot of the movements you're doing with the young ones. You're doing different tumbling and rolling
Right.
variations, and then some like different crawling and
Yes.
crab walking and flips. Now, from the outside looking in as a parent, what if a parent is like looking at those movements and they're like, that's not speed training?
Correct.
What do you say to them?
It's exactly. It is not speed training. That is the point here. So we don't want to be specifying with that yet. Yes, they should run, jump, sprint, but they need to understand body control, awareness, balance, coordination in the most remedial sense first before you can start truly specifying and driving that specific adaptation. And until that, those, you're skipping steps.
Now, when you talk about specification with speed training, are you talking about hammering home like the details of mechanics, like the
Yeah,
young
yeah,
ones?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that just doesn't land well with 9, 10, 11, and 12 year olds too. So just through experience, found that obviously you want to keep cueing simple, even for professional athletes. 1 or 2 cues, you want to quickly drive home the point. But even more so, obviously, with younger ones, they want to move. So I've even found that it it is in their interest sometimes to tastefully tease in some just position work. They don't need to know why they're doing it, but just isometric holds. However, experience has shown that doesn't even land well. They want to move. They just want to move. So that is, if you can keep them moving and engaged, awesome. So simple planking and things of that nature, I've kind of thrown out. So I like to actually, for instance, specifically address that. If they are doing a crawl, well, can we force them to maybe stabilize a little more? Can we put a ball on their tummy or a cone on their back to make sure that there is some awareness as to, hey, I need to be stable and strong and sturdy in this position. So you can gamify and challenge them with tasks to kind of get what you want. Um, but they need to be moving, and they need to keep it simple, and they need to. The one thing you cannot overlook too is when we start talking about speed, that is the most stressful thing when you start bringing someone up to velocity. And there's a lot of preparatory work that needs to go into that. And that's beyond muscular. That is ligaments and tendons too. So that low level crawling and the low level leaping, 2-footed takeoffs and landings, the hopping, the 1-footed takeoffs and landings, bounding when you start alternating takeoffs and landings from side to side. Those extensive landings and takeoffs prepare the tendons and ligaments too properly. You don't want to skip these steps because despite being young athletes still need to recover as well too, and they need to be built up in that proper way. They need that broad base, super general skills, and that will make them extra resilient too.
Let's get into that a little bit more. So, in terms of mitigating injury
Yeah,
risk for the young ones, why is it important that we really take our time and we don't rush their speed development?
they the formative years, that is where you largely build up a lot of that tendon and ligament strength. And it wasn't until I actually had the opportunity to watch like a Robbie Mertz come through our academy and then step foot on a professional field, or watch I mean, I've worked with Sarah for 7, 8 years, Tessa Delarose 6, 7 years. You have to see these things truly bear themselves out to truly appreciate all the work that you put in almost a decade ago. We have another wave coming through with girls that actually started off in grassroots even before them. Lola Abraham is a pick commit next year, who started off in our grassroots program. Fiona Mahan, who's going to be going to Alabama this year, started off in our grassroots. They came through from 3 years old, and now they're going to these top institutions. And we didn't skip any steps. So it's now, it only feeds into the what you know to be the truth. Right? We know this, and it's written and it's spelled out for us, and many of these long-term development books, if any of you ones, or anything of that nature. But now you actually have the experience to see it. And the important thing is, when we're in these young years, that you are, again, building that tissue integrity, not just for the musculature, but also building that range of motion too. That's one of the things that I noticed with the older athletes, particularly like free agents in regards to the professionals. Some of them have very diverse and restricted, we'll say, movement patterns. Yes, they're fantastic soccer players, but that's again the specificity. They're awesome at their craft, but they're almost a ticking time bomb in terms of an injury. So you can, when they're young and they're quite impressionable and able to be shaped and molded, you can develop these things that you want to allow them to be able to sustain continued athletic success for honestly the entirety of their life. Because I don't like to cap LTAD at just, well, you're no longer a competitive athlete, you're done. We want to be able to have a healthy and happy and entire life.
I love those examples of the girls who went on to play at some of the top D1 schools, how they went through your whole system and they didn't skip any steps. And it's really interesting, even within our education system, we don't skip steps. We start in kindergarten, then we go through
Right.
elementary school, then middle school.
Right.
But I just don't get, when it comes to speed development, why do people want to skip steps? Is it because they think a certain training is going to get their young one ahead, or
Right.
is it the lack of education?
It's prisoner to the moment, and it is keeping up with the Joneses to an extent as well too. They believe that playing on a U11 futsal national team is going to get them or curry favor down the road with Division 1 programs or national, or even you see even younger athletes foregoing their final years of school to sign professional contracts, or altogether, even now more so, it's more even prevalent in the women's game, where they're just skipping college altogether and signing contracts. So everything is starting earlier, but I know for certain that no professional coach nor any top college coach cares one bit what you did when you were 11 at all. And it all that matters to them, because their job is on the line, and their ability to win in the moment is what you can do in that moment. So oftentimes the parent and the athlete, and it's often, particularly when you're a young athlete, it's almost being fueled by the parents. They truly do fall prisoner to the moment, and they become quite myopic in that specific point in time.
One thing I like that you said about the young one speed sessions is they can be gamified. But
Yeah.
I think when parents see the kids having fun, they don't see it as a good workout, but it can be possible to have a great workout, be competitive, while also the
Right.
kids are smiling and laughing and just having a great time and loving working out and loving sports. And that's so important at that age, so that they stick with it.
right. And largely at that age, don't objectify anything. However, that's not to say that you cannot, like President's Physical Fitness test, which I think has largely died sadly in high schools. You can still, even in young ages, make it competitive and even measure things at times, like a 300-yard run, 60-yard sprint. It doesn't have to be, and nor should it be, consistently like what I do with the older girls, where I'm almost charting on a weekly basis. But yeah, occasionally you can sneak that in, but for the most part, it should be relay races and different team sort of activities and just one-on-one competitive environments, uh, and, and largely fun. And it's kind of the art of the coach to embed little things that you want that are going to be specific to your program as they age within there without them necessarily knowing that they're doing that. That's the art and the acumen that are required to be a coach, I believe.
That's brilliant. And I love that you slip in some measurements once in a while.
Yeah,
I think that can be good for the young ones because then they see, oh, that's what I'm going to get to do on a regular basis when I graduate from
right,
this B program and when I'm an older girl like
right,
Sarah Shupansky. So I
right.
think it motivates them to stick with what they're currently doing and just like competing and having fun. And I love that you use races too. And I think races probably get the most
Oh
intensity
yeah,
out of the kids. You
absolutely.
never see them sprinting faster and
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
now are there any other things that you're doing with the young ones? Like so you do like crawling, crab walking, rolling, tumbling, like different balance drills, anything else?
Uh, Hanging, trying to one of the big things, specifically like if we're just talking about soccer athletes and being a speed-based sport like it is, uh, their ability to move their own body weight. So I've come over pretty much the last decade. I've morphed from, let's say, more traditional strength and conditioning, where there's more conventional loading, barbells, dumbbells, things of that nature. And yes, I still do that, but it's more subtle. I value more relative strength. So one of the things I want to start actually developing earlier is an athlete's ability to just move their own body mass. And one of the best indicators of that are chin ups. So that it starts with just the hanging and things of that nature, and then eventually they just develop an ability to overcome that. So Nordic hamstring curls and chin ups, basic push ups. I value dips a little more too because I always like to take it to the most challenging. If you can do a full dip on like parallel bars, if you think of just the apparatus used for that, in which your shoulders go beneath your elbows like a true dip, then you're more than fine and capable of doing perfect push-ups with a nice hollow body. Pistols are always good too. That's a nice challenge. And you can, particularly when they have the tinier limb lengths. That's the one thing I found, because the one thing I think I would like to say about the youngest age groups is they're far more capable than most people think too. So that is, they are like sponges, so they absorb things so quickly. And also too, because they are tinier and they have lower body masses too, you can download in essence these super important things that I find, that are much challenging to teach to an older athlete into their little brains and have them assimilate and process all of this and be amazing at it as they, and if you just honestly just stay with it, like maintaining it, they'll have it in perpetuity, for forever. So
I've definitely noticed that the young ones are really good at the pistol squats compared to some
yeah,
of the
yeah,
older
right.
kids.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So, like, if I have a free agent pro who has a tight Achilles and tight anterior, never gonna happen. So I'm not gonna broach it. But if I have a super malleable, whippy, slithery 5-year-old who hasn't been honestly ruined yet, have them do it, have them start developing it, and then they'll have it forever. If you just revisit it and throughout the rest of, honestly, as long as they want to, it is there forever. And it's the same thing with like the Nordic hamstring curl too. That's what I've noticed. Their body masses are so tiny, you'll be amazed after just a little bit of, and I don't, at 9, 10, 11, I don't really dabble with that too much, but I'll occasionally have them do like a little bit of something structured in there. You'd be amazed what that little bit of structure, like once every 2 months, does, because adapt to it so so quickly. By the time they're 13 or 14, they're like Nordic kings and queens, and they're like doing amazing things. So, um, yeah, you can tastefully build in little things that you value for your program, and that's one of my suggestions out for all the coaches out there.
Now, I want to come back to why just crawling is so good for translating to speed. Can you
Uh,
just kind of explain what intermuscular coordination means and why this exercise is so great for that?
yeah, one of the big things, and I think you've probably seen this too with soccer athletes. Uh, Sometimes their upper body movements are a bit chaotic, and sometimes they're actually not congruent with what the hips want to do. And when we start talking about crawling, we have that natural contralateral, opposite arm, opposite leg sort of dynamic, and that is organic to running and movement, and it is a lower level, lower velocity, and whether it's crab, bear, Spider-Man, whatever, any iteration, you are continually fulfilling that, and you're doing it in slightly different ways. So, and the one thing too that I think I would throw out to all other coaches, just a little bit of advice. Everyone learns differently, and largely a lot of athleticism is just motor learning, right? If you we Our job, Erica, you and I, we are trying to drive some sort of adaptation, and it's not just a muscular thing, like, hey, like sets and reps. It's, well, how does this land with your brain? And the larger point being with that is, you don't know how this specific movement will land with an athlete. So for Johnny and Susie, the traditional bear crawl might be enough to fulfill that opposite arm, opposite leg movement strategy. But for whatever reason, maybe Matt, who's left-handed, maybe it's the backwards crab crawl that's like, oh, and you don't know. So in essence, that's why you want to inundate these young athletes with as many diverse movements as possible. You're dancing around this common narrative, but you're constantly changing and moving because you don't know what's going to land. And for me to sit here and say, well, this does this, and I don't, but you just want to expose them to as much as possible, similar, but never truly congruent, just to see how it lands. And typically, it winds up working well. And then you will, as you have a Sarah or a Tessa or a Lola, things of that nature, you'll know specifically for them what makes them tick. And that is just one of those things that you develop as a relationship between coach athlete.
That is such an important point that they do need that movement variety. And
Right.
with those two exercises, a crawl and a crab walk, I mean, there's so many different muscles firing. And I
Right.
don't know if you found this with like the crab walks, but if they're doing them kind of more on the heels, they're getting more hamstring work.
Yeah,
And they're
absolutely.
like, whoa, like I feel
Yeah.
that in the hamstrings, not as much the core or the arm. So that's like interesting
Right. That
too.
pulling sensation as they grab the ground with the next step, as opposed to that overly toesy anterior dominant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's, again, that's the art. And we could go back and forth with, I mean, a million different exercises about just the subtlety and nuance. And That's what's great about it. You can take that crab rock that we just mentioned, and you could have them do it in a variety of different ways that would even land differently within itself too. And that's what's brilliant about all of this. This isn't some slick 6 week program where we're going to put 6 inches on your vertical and we're going to take 2/10 off your 40. We're not selling any of that. We're saying this is just the necessary steps that if we start now and we are patient, by the time you are 17 or 18, you'll be pleased with where you lined up. And we're not skipping those critical steps.
Now, as we wrap this up, what would you say to parents who are looking around and they're seeing all their friends signing their 9 to 12-year-old up with a mechanics coach, a gait analysis, a biomechanics speed coach, and like all these gurus? But then there's this one program over here where it says we're doing fun and games and races. What do you say to those parents as they're making that decision?
Timing matters, right? In life, as with anything, any scenario, it's being in the right spot at the right time. And one of the things that I learned from now coaching for about 17 years with the Riverhounds, that the timing of when you want these adaptations to manifest themselves matters. Well, that's great. If you want to hit that, use a Fast and the Furious reference, if you want to hit that NOS button at 10, by all means, you're going to exhaust that quality too early. I'm trying to nurture and develop it and hit things at a certain time so they're peaking when it matters most, when they're getting ready to sign their first professional contract or to play on the full women's national team. So delaying things is just as necessary as as a, as it is to developing things at certain times. 2 cookies later or 1 cookie now.
That is so great. And I think that is just such a wonderful point to end on. And for everyone listening, if you want to follow Mike's work, I mean, he's posting so many videos of speed training, well, quote unquote speed training with this age group specifically. So I'll include his Twitter and Instagram in the caption below. And I'll also include the podcast I did with Sarah Shupansky, who played at the Riverhounds, and she went through this whole physical development process. She didn't skip steps, and she ended up at Pittsburgh being an impact player. So I'll include that interview in the caption below as well. So be sure to check that out. Her story is absolutely amazing. And Mike also coached her for many years. So he saw the whole process just unfold, and he just saw her blossom as she got older. So thank you for listening today. And Mike, thank you again for coming on. This was such a great discussion.
I look forward to these every single time, and God willing, the next one we'll do it even better.
Oh, 100%. There will definitely be a next time.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. I'll see you on the next episode.